Hi, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of The Hitstreak. Check it out. I got to give a big shout out to my show sponsor, my friends over at AVLX. I also have to give a big shout out to Charles Henry and Ace Young, the amazing performers and producers of the music behind the show, as well as the amazing people that make up the Hit Lab creative team, who are the producers of the show. Folks, I have a favor to ask. If you like what you hear, and I know you do, click that subscribe button to make sure you get alerted when new episodes are dropped. Thanks for tuning in.
The real success stories told by the people who live them.
We're going to have some guests on this show that everybody knows, and we're going to have guests on this show that nobody knows yet.
One by one, Nick Hyder is adding hits to the hit streak.
Blessings, folks. Welcome back to another episode of The Hit Streak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder, and listen, we're about to get right to it. In the Hit Lab with me today, I've got somebody that is very special to me, has had a massive impact on my life. I'm proud to call him a friend. Check it out. His laundry list of stuff is so long that I got to read it, even though I know him. He's the co-founder and minority owner of the Major League Nashville Soccer Club, a founding partner of Jumpstart Health Investors, best-selling author of Create and Orchestrate. My friend Marcus Whitney is in the building today. I'm so excited, Marcus. Dude, I've been wanting to get you in here for a minute.
Man, I'm glad we could make it happen. I'm glad to be here, man. This is awesome, by the way, man.
Thank you very much.
Incredible, yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. They did it, you know how we roll.
Yeah, well, listen, I thought I knew how you rolled, but every time I come check on you, you upgrading, man. So this is what's up, man.
Well, the they when there's a carrot in front of the animal when they race, right? So like I have people that are my carrots, and I'm always watching what they're doing, paying attention, and when I see them grow, it's inspiring, and I'm going to grow too, right?
What's up.
You're one of those people, and like I say, dude, you're a busy man.
Yes, I have to own that. You know, I never like it when someone says like, "How you doing?" and your response is, "I'm busy," right?
Yeah.
But this is a busy season for sure, you know, and I definitely feel blessed to be busy because the things that I'm doing are all things that, you know, I feel like a couple decades ago I would have never imagined I could be doing.
That's right.
So yeah, I'll own it. Pretty busy.
So I'm going to take them back just a minute and let them know, like, so seriously, we were just talking pre-show. When I first met you, I was at literal rock bottom, and you weren't far above me at that time. This is way back in like 2011.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like it's questionable as to whether or not I was above you. You know, in 2011, I was a couple of years out of divorce. You know, I think we probably had to both had the same credit issues at the time.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I was in heavy transition, you know, career-wise, really heavy transition career-wise, and so it was a difficult time, you know, starting to establish a new relationship. I was a couple years in, you know, with my wife Rachel. At the time, we were just, you know, dating, and yeah, it was a big transition period.
I gotta say, like, watching it from afar, like, I understand when you've got that foundation and you're building up how. Just like it's just straight madness. And you were living in at the time your project, which was blowing up, you were back and forth you were on, was it New York? Boston.
Yeah.
Back. So you were splitting time here.
Yeah.
I moved in a house that your parents owned. They were my next door neighbors. And, as I was just watching it, because your two kids at the time are now young men. And like, just, I don't know, man, everything was just so graceful, and it may not have felt that way when you were going through it, but from where I sat, it sure was.
I mean, I think the thing that you and I both know is, you know, you live next door to the anchor, right?
Yes.
So if my parents, you know, if they weren't there, just kind of being that steady piece in my life, I don't think you would have seen it feel that way, right? Because they filled in a lot of holes and a lot of gaps for years. I mean, really until 2014, I would say.
Yes.
So from 2011 when we met, they were already filling in gaps, and they kind of continued to do that until 2014 when I came back home. Rachel and I got married, and we brought the boys into that house. You know, that was a big transition point for us. But no, man, like it really was not straightforward. You know what I mean? I was on the road every other week, basically, and for a week I had an apartment in Beacon Hill, in Boston, and sometimes I wasn't there. Sometimes I was in San Francisco at Facebook's office or whatever, and so it was a crazy time.
Well, it was I don't know if you like. Obviously, I moved in. Like your parents did so much for me, and the same things that they did for you. Like they were unbelievable. They are such a stable, graceful, grounding force.
Yeah.
And like half of what my kid has accomplished, my oldest son has accomplished, is because of the direction from your mother.
That doesn't surprise me. She has been a mother to so many kids, so many of my friends. She's been sort of a grandmother to so many of my friends' kids. That's just it's just who she is. You know what I mean? And it's what gives her joy. And so, I'm just very lucky, man.
Dude, I will forever look at those two houses on that cul-de-sac and be like, dude, something happened there.
Yeah, something magical.
That's right.
No question.
That's right.
No question.
So when one of the things that so we would sit back when back then, and I can remember having beers on the back patio a couple times. Late at night, you would always tell me what you got going on, and one of the things that I always noticed about you that I thought was great is like, so since then, in the last like 10 years, Jumpstart Health has, like, it started out, it's grown into a freaking massive a beast of a company, of a VC company. The Nashville Soccer Club, which, like, you were just doing like little club stuff back in the day. It's all happened. The book, what you were doing with on YouTube with the videos and stuff back in 15 and 16 was so far ahead of its time, because now it's standard. We're literally doing it right now.
Yeah.
I just watched you had all these things, these milestones in your mind, and you were just so everything, just as you rolled it out. A lot of people, they become jack of all trades and an ace of none, but it was like you just had a step-by-step, everything that seemed so process-driven. You partnered with all the right people, and over 10 years, you did a lifetime of accomplishments and achievements, right?
It's... So when I got to Nashville in 2000, and I was waiting tables as dropout, and had one kid, and Kieran wasn't born yet, that really set the pace for me in terms of what I was going to be doing, even at this point, right? Which was just, I could not play the standard playbook. Right. I was going to have to create my own playbook. And so a lot of that had to do with making sure I understood who I am, and not just what I like, what I don't like, but like what makes me different, and where can I be excellent, in a field? Where can I stand out?
Yes.
And so that awareness that I could not, on paper, my credentials were not ever going to match up with my contemporaries if I tried to do it the traditional way. And so I had to lean on my inner strengths and then work on developing those. And so everything that I got into, was something that I had a pretty good sense that I would be strong in. And then I also was just really about being early. Like I talked about in 2007, I went to South by Southwest, and that was before like South by Southwest became something big to most people.
Right.
But it was big to some really important people, like Gary Vaynerchuk was there in 2007, and Zuckerberg was there, and Twitter didn't officially launch, but it basically launched because that was the event where everyone got their first Twitter handles and started using it in real time. Keep in mind, this is before the iPhone.
That's right.
So I've sort of made a habit of, I did my first podcast in 2005.
It's incredible.
Like before people even knew what a podcast was. It was a programming podcast. It was called a Pro PHP podcast. And, back then, the podfather was this guy named Adam Curry. He used to be, a VJ on MTV.
Yep.
Okay. And what he had done was he took the RSS feed that Dave Weiner created back in the early 2000s called Really Simple Syndication, which is what blogs were all based on. Incredible. Right? He took that and he was like, okay, we don't have to just use this for text. We can enclose media in this. And then people started making podcatchers. And there's actually a guy who lives in Nashville, his name's Chris McIntyre, and he built one of the first registries and indexes for podcasts called Podcast Alley. But like before he moved here, he like built it and sold it before he moved here.
Wow.
Like, this is, and he was one of the co-founders of Jumpstart Foundry. So it's like, because back in 2000, I had to focus on my strengths and I knew my strength was going to be technology. I've just been leaning into being ahead of the game on technology for a really, really long time. I shifted probably, in the last like 5 years to learning capital, because I saw that technology was starting to kind of get very, very accessible. It was getting harder and harder to be ahead of the pack from a technology perspective, but capital was still capital meaning finance, right?
Yep.
Was still pretty obscure to most people. Most people, like they knew how the stock market worked, but as things like crypto started popping up and like venture capital and incubators, accelerators, they didn't really have a working knowledge of that. I didn't either, but I know we have the internet. You can learn anything at any time. You know what I mean? And so, I don't know, man. I just, I feel like sometimes constraints and difficulties, if you have determination or you have a reason to not accept failure as an option, like it will drive you into the unique path where you can start to do things in a way, in a rate that other people can't. They talk a lot about immigrants and how like immigrants have like this thing, right? when they come to America, because their frame of reference for what the quality of life is here versus what they've experienced is so different,
right?
That they just have a different mindset.
Yeah.
They have a fundamentally different mindset, and it's very difficult for someone who's born and raised here to have that mindset, right?
Yes.
Because this is all you know. And so, I think sometimes difficulties and circumstances, mold us, and I think a lot of who we are as a human race. Like you think about it, like we didn't have to evolve to survive and be the dominant species on the planet.
Right.
That wasn't necessary. I mean, look at all the other options that are out there. We're certainly physically not as, compelling as many of them, right? Why did we evolve to survive over so many years? And I think there is something about us that like we're built to thrive in adversity, and we have this incredible brain that lets us, create our ways out of really tough situations, really bad situations. That's right. And so, I rambled for a little bit, but I always want to like pull it away from I did something so great. You know what I mean? Because for me, there's so many examples of other people that do great or greater things, and I'm just fascinated by humanity. Absolutely. You know what I mean? I'm fascinated by humanity. I'm fascinated by the things I see us do, and I'm like you, man. You talked about that carrot. I see people, and it's like, man, it tells me there's something more that I can tap into, that I haven't tapped into yet. And it's like, all right, well, let's see if we can get there. Let's see if we can find it. Yeah.
Well, you can tell you have a history in athletics and sports, because I think that's what the best teammates see, what other people can do when they're better than them or are having great times, and they see it. They're happy for them, but at the same time, it inspires them to let them know it can be done, versus the people that are like just kind of hate on the folks that have the success prior, Yeah. And that's when I say that you're able to surround yourself with good people. I mean, literally, like I can remember conversations. One of my gifts is that if you gave me a puzzle, I couldn't put it together unless I took it apart first. However, I do live in the moment enough to remember. Like there's certain things that you told me multiple times. And so one time we were standing, you actually had come by to drop off a kid or pick up a kid or drop off some groceries or something. You're in the car, you pulled up, and we were just talking out in the road. And I was asking how things are going, and you were basically saying like, we're pivoting Jumpstart. We've studied it. We've looked at it. We're going into healthcare. That's where we looked at our portfolio, the most profitable things. I remember you saying that. Not long after that, same cul-de-sac, just catching up. You're like, yeah, man, I'm about to write a book, right? not long after that, or maybe I got those two out of order, but you were like, yeah, man, we're doing this thing with the soccer club. We're bringing Major League Soccer to Nashville, which was an unbelievably large play. And I mean, they've been trying to do it with baseball for decades and can't get it done. You've just been, and all the while you're building all these things, while these other things, you're writing the book, launching, helping get the soccer club off the ground, because a lot of the big players in it today weren't in it back then, right? They came later. It's just been like, those are the things that inspired me to be able to, because people ask me a lot, how do you do so many things? How can you continue to grow other things, launch new things without losing the quality of the things that you already started? And I learned a lot of what I did just by, I remember those conversations and watching you do those things. And it's that's one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur to do, is when you do something new, something that happened before didn't lose its magic.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really important to not do too many things at one time, and to be really careful about the people that you bring into the things that you're working on, right? Because one of the key things is you can't do these things by yourself.
That's right.
And look, you all, when you bring people in, you have to also give something up, right? And so I think there's this constant like cycling, and people talk about it like reinvention, but I feel like, look, I mean, just back to our biology, right? It's like, what do they say? Like every 7 years, we're like a whole new person at the cellular level, right? So it's like, just sort of lean into that a little bit, right? Like you don't need to hold on to anything. At any given point in time, you're there to sort of achieve a certain goal.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that goal is part of something much bigger than you, right?
That's right.
And so try to see that goal as an important part of your story, but also try to see it as part of a much, much bigger story. And then you can make room for other people. You know what I mean? Right. And when you can make room for other people, then other people get to help you, get to take some of the load off of you, Yeah. It's interesting, like right now, in terms of like how busy I am, and like with the podcast thing, what's taken up the time from the podcasting for me now is really professional public speaking. Like that's it's effectively the same kind of energy and work.
Yep.
Because you have to prepare for it. You know what I mean? And instead of it being sort of in one place, you're moving and going into the other spaces. And you have to sort of engage with an audience, right? So I'm still doing that same type of activity, but I've shifted it into this different medium, effectively, right? And in order to do that, well, really, like I have to have a speaking agent, because I can't take the time that it takes to like effectively sell myself out there. Well, you have a speaking agent. Well, they're kind of representing you, and they're not representing you exactly the way that you would represent yourself, but
I call that the 70-30 rule.
Yeah, right. You know what I mean? But they're getting you out there, and they're getting you booked, and then they're taking 20% of the thing, but then they're getting you more bookings, and sometimes they have relationships you don't have, and so they get you onto stages you wouldn't be able to get onto before. Yeah. And it's just, you just have to be pretty fluid, I think. You know what I mean? The people who struggle, who have fear about giving up things, I think will struggle to accomplish many things, because it's just going to be so tightly wound around one particular thing.
You said something multiple times to me back in the day, and that is nobody's undefeated. Because I was always asking, I was, especially growing the agencies we were growing back then, a lot of it was for the first time. We were struggling, dude. Like we would hit walls, and we would always power through. But you said that to me multiple times, dude. Nobody's undefeated, bro. You just keep rocking and rolling, keep moving forward, and I mean, like, and patience and timing has a lot to do with it. How long did it take you to write? So I've got the book. Those of you watching with us today, Create and Orchestrate by Marcus Whitney. It's fantastic. I literally watched you write it. I got rough drafts of it and everything. Talk to me about the process of that, because that took a minute.
It took 5 years. I had to first learn what it takes to write a book. And
what does it take to write a book?
Well, it depends on what your standards are.
Okay.
So you could write a book in a day. You could write a book today if you wanted, right? You could just talk for a while and have one of these like Dragon, take your audio, turn it into text, give it to an editor, have it cleaned up, put it into a couple of chapters, put it on Amazon and Kindle, and have a book.
Right.
That's no problem. You can also pay a ghostwriter to write a book for you.
Yep.
Right. And there are so many people doing that. Right.
Right.
I think for me, here were my standards. One, I had to write the book. It had to be me. Two, it could not be a Me Too book. So it had to deliver something that was new to the world. Which is the 8 core concepts, right? Like that's no one else did that.
Yep.
Right?
I speak on those 8 core concepts all the time.
Right. So that took a while to like create. And I think the other thing was it had to be a pretty good book.
Yeah.
Right. Like it had to be a book that genuinely, when people read it, they're like, wow, that's pretty good.
Absolutely.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And so when I wrote the first draft of the book, it was so far from the last 2 things. It was me, I wrote it, but it was so far from bringing anything new to the world.
Okay.
And it was so far from being pretty good.
Right.
That I was just like, oh, I'm screwed. I'm totally screwed. And it's interesting. The thing that I ended up doing that changed everything was I never called her this. We never established this as an official model of the relationship, but it served as an important milestone in my life that I now seek out coaches. I got a coach. I got someone who was a writer, who was a professional writer, and who, we toyed with the idea of her ghostwriting the book and things like that, especially when I was like really down on myself about it and just sort of feeling like I couldn't do it.
Right.
But the main thing she did was she helped me frame out the book and basically gave me like a project plan for how many words were going to be in every chapter, how I was going to structure every chapter, what you needed to have in a chapter to make it a chapter.
Yeah. Framework.
Yeah, a framework. Yeah, a framework. And once I had that, then what became really obvious was I was missing some life experiences.
Okay.
And right, so like, one of the things that's in the book is the story of the soccer.
Yep.
Team making it to Major League Soccer.
Yeah.
And I was kind of missing that holy cow moment in the book.
Yep.
And with what I had quite frankly achieved
in
my life.
Boom.
You know what I mean? And it was like, it's not quite ready yet because I'm not quite ready yet.
Right.
Right. And so after I lived out those things, then it was like, okay, we can start to write about it.
Yep.
And then the other thing was, those things weren't easy. They actually brought some trauma into my life. Everyone's like, oh man, minority owner, Major League Soccer team. And it's like, look, if you think for 1 second that didn't like leave scars.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have no idea about what the reality of high stakes business is.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean?
That's right.
This is not like starting just about any other company. Right.
Right.
There's a limited number of these out there.
Right.
Right. And I know different people have different views of the world, but the world is competitive in my view, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so for me to get to the other end of this process and be able to say, I'm a minority owner, I went through some stuff to get there. You know what I mean? And so I needed to process that and then let the wisdom of that be what I put in the book. And nothing that wasn't going to help anybody, or certainly wasn't going to help me. Right. You know what I mean? What needed to be in there was the wisdom, and so that's what's in there, right? But I'm not trying to say anything about my experience that I think is unique. I don't think it's unique. I think when you start playing high stakes,
part of it.
Yeah, I think when you start playing high stakes games,
Yeah.
right, you will understand the height of competition. You'll start to understand like you don't walk out of it without scars.
That's right.
I mean, who wins a world championship and doesn't play injured?
That's right. That's right.
You know what I mean?
Golly, dude.
Right. So it's like you just have to understand like that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
The founder's story, every single person that we help launch an agency or a new business, there's like, life's going to happen, dude. Stuff's going to happen. You're going to get knocked down, and every one of us always feels like it's unique, and like our suffering is unique. And what I've seen in the hundreds of times that we've done it is it's the same. It's the same story, just a different version.
That's right.
To different people.
That's right.
And you were just doing it at the high stakes. So I mean, like, there's a difference between the low stakes poker table and the high stakes poker table.
Totally.
Right?
And look, let's keep it real. That was, I'm 46, right? So that was in my early 40s, and that was certainly the highest stakes game I had played to date, right? Now, you can look in other cities at what has happened in this process, and you can see, man, there's some people have lost. You know what I mean? And so here's the headline. The headline is everybody made it across the line together in Nashville. Right, we figured it out. Other cities did not figure it out.
Right, because other cities wanted, other markets wanted this team, right?
Totally,
yeah,
totally, and couldn't pull all the things you had to pull together.
Right,
like,
I mean, you guys just opened the stadium.
It was a tall order for Nashville. Was at the bottom of the list. This is documented. Like Commissioner Garber has gone on record saying this multiple times. Like, Nashville was at the bottom of the list of all of the cities that were there. And the number of things that had to come together, the number of unlikely partners that had to become partners and work together and collaborate for Nashville to go from being bottom of the list to the first expansion team granted. Right. Right. It's like that was a tall order. And a lot of other cities could not pull that off. Yep. Mostly because like they couldn't, people just egos.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
People are always the problem.
Egos. Yeah. They just and that's not to say in Nashville we were void of egos. Sure. But like I think everybody understood what it was going to take to win. Yeah. And it was it was a competitive process. It was our city against many other cities. Yes. You know what I mean? Yes. There were a finite number of options. Yeah. And so
like and how long, so you were working on, how many years did it take, like, of that in the making?
Yeah, so
I mean, you guys just got the stadium open this year.
Yeah, May. So Chris Jones started Nashville Football Club, Nashville FC, 2013.
Wow.
If my understanding is,
that sounds about right.
If my understanding is correct, 2013. I believe that's when he first tweeted about it, and I believe it was in 2013 that I paid $75 and became member number 86. Yeah. of the nonprofit Nashville Football Club. Yeah. I became chairman of that nonprofit football club in September of 2014. Okay.
That's when it really started moving forward at that time.
It was probably a year after that.
Okay.
But it all started not too long after I became chairman. It was like once I became chairman, there were things that were happening in the environment. Yeah. It wasn't like I came in and magically all this stuff happened. It's like most things. It's a timing thing, right?
Dude, you were out there hustling, looking for, you were trying to find the right contacts. I can remember.
Yeah.
You were, it wasn't like you could just open up your phone and be like, I'm going to call this person, this person, this person.
No, man. Look, there were so many, look, I remember meeting the late David Williams, who was the the athletic director at Vanderbilt. Yep. Trying to get him to give us the green light to serve beer at the games. There was a huge networking component to that.
So many relationships had to be built.
Yeah. I didn't know David Dill and Chris Redditch, who are my partners in the ownership group that brought USL, and we're still sort of, our group is still very, very tight.
That's awesome.
As minority owners, we're kind of like one component of the ownership group. I didn't know them at all.
Yeah.
When that process started,
Yep.
I met them through this process, and now, I'm going to be in Chris's wedding, right? I mean, like we're all like super, super, super good friends.
Yep.
Family. I mean, I think we basically feel like we're family.
Yep.
But that's what happens. We go through hard stuff together. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, dude, I mean, it's just, and then not that, everybody that's successful to a degree has a certain level of ego, right? Because you don't win on accident.
Yeah. I mean, yes, of course. But ego is a very loaded word in our society, right? So you got to like be careful about what you like.
That's right.
The use of it, right?
Yeah.
Sure. I think the most positive way to frame it is you have to believe in yourself.
Bam.
Right? You have to believe in yourself.
Yep.
That's a requirement, right? If you don't believe in yourself, you've already lost.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And I tell Ethan's baseball team all the time, they say it after me all the time, I'll say winners and they say anticipate, and I'll say losers and they'll say react. And that's when, as a business owner, when you take those losses or whatever, you kind of gotta expect them a little bit, because when you react to them, they sting a lot worse. The wounds are a lot deeper, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the things that you've always done incredibly well. You talked about how competitive it is. Obviously, anytime anything's high stakes, anytime you're messing with people's money, dude, like, it's competitive, and it means something.
Yeah, and people, it's like people don't know who people are until they go through hard things together. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, everyone meets, we all get around a table, and we're like, okay, we all want to do this thing. But it's not until it really comes down to it, and like some people have to start doing things for the betterment of the overall group, right? That you really see who's made of what, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. It was also the thing I never got around to actually saying. I started and I kind of went down this whole path. But the thing I never got around to actually saying was, I'm 46, and you asked me when this whole thing started. So 2014. So I started in my late 30s.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it was far and away the highest stakes game I had ever played. So there's a little bit of an orientation to the big leagues, right?
That's
you know what I
right.
mean? And you kind of get slapped around a little bit in that orientation process, because you're new to it. You've never done a deal this big.
That's right.
You don't understand what you're walking into. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
After you've done it one time, then you start to have an understanding of, okay, these are the dynamics. These are the things that are going on. You also, if you're honest with yourself, you'll see all the places where you made mistakes.
Boom.
Right? You know what I mean? Like, that's the most important thing, is not to be like, oh, next time I know this person is going to do this and this person is going to do that. No, like, next time, what are you going to do?
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
So yeah, I think you have to believe in yourself, because you're going to step into situations you've never been in before. You will make a lot of mistakes, but if you persevere and you do the right thing, you can make it to the other side.
So one of the things you did as you just mentioned a lot of firsts, right? Taking on a lot of new things, a lot of first times. You were doing a lot of things in your free time for the first time. Like, you climbed a mountain.
Yeah.
So obviously you've got some competitive outlets, which I believe are very necessary when you're extremely competitive in the workforce, right? So I remember you climbed a mountain. Which one did you climb?
Mount St. Helens.
Mount St. Helens. All right, we're gonna talk about that for a second.
Okay.
But then what else? So So after that,
did Mount St. Helens, was like running some half marathons for a little bit. That was like kind of fun. But then my frame was, I'm kind of a big guy.
Yep.
So I was like, it's kind of beating up my knees. So I don't know if I want to do that long term. But I did have fun with that. And then, with my youngest, we started taking Hapkido, which is a form of martial arts. We started taking that in his freshman year of high school. We did it, up until he went to college, got black belts. Then he went to college, and then I was like, all right, well, there's no competition for Hapkido anywhere, right? And I had always wanted to try jiu-jitsu, so I started I started doing jiu-jitsu like right before the pandemic hit, and then the pandemic hit and that stopped.
Yep.
But since it's like pretty much as soon as the vaccines came out, got vaccinated, and then 2 weeks later I started rolling again. So
Yep.
So I've been doing that for I guess cumulatively about a year and a half. Doing jiu-jitsu and competing, for a 46-year-old fairly regularly. It's not I don't get paid to do it.
Right.
But I do train, and I do sign up for competitions pretty regularly. I've got 2 in June.
Yeah.
1 on Saturday. So, it's a big part of my life.
How necessary is that for like preparation in business?
I mean, look,
For you.
yeah, I mean, so what I've come to appreciate is feeling like in any given situation, I'm in the alpha group, and I'm not always in the alpha group, but like I like it when I am.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have to lower the quality of the people I'm around to feel alpha.
Right.
So
Hell yeah.
So instead, I have to increase what I'm doing to be in the alpha group, right? So one thing I learned throughout sort of a lot of the hard window. So when we met in 2011, one of the features of my life was I was out of shape.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh, you're a totally different physical person.
Right. I was out of shape, and
as was I.
yeah. We both tightened up, man. We both tightened up, which is good. One of the things I realized when I started really going through hard things in business, I was like, man, I have to get strong.
Yes.
And I don't know where I got it from. I just remember like you have to get strong, and I just like bought weights, put them in the garage, and just started like lifting weights. Just started doing strong lifts, 5x5. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And just did that for years, just building muscle. And what I realized was, you start walking into rooms with your shoulders back and a frame that like looks like you can lift a person off the ground.
Yeah.
And it hits different.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so let's take that to the next logical step, right? Which is, okay, jiu-jitsu. So, jiu-jitsu is the art of controlling another person to the point where you can submit them. And like, let's not mince words. Like, submit means the person's life is in your hands.
That's right.
Right? Okay. And so there's a lot that goes with, and one of the really great things about jiu-jitsu is, compared to many other martial arts, not all, but many, is that it's been proven in the world of combat sports to be real, to work. It works, right? And so, and also, they don't hand out belts in jiu-jitsu, right?
Okay.
So you can be a white belt for a long time, but someone who's trained and they're a white belt, they've trained 6 months,
right,
against an untrained person. It's a problem.
That's right.
It's a problem, right? And so there's value in being in a room and just sort of knowing that you command the space that you're in, right? It just translates at this physiological level into the way you carry yourself. It's not even conscious. It's a subconscious thing. You know what I mean? But going into work on a Monday when we have all our meetings, and if everyone's like, "Hey, what'd you do this weekend?" and it's like, "Oh man, I had a barbecue. Oh man, I was out on a boat. What'd you do, Marcus?" "I was in a tournament. I choked 2 dudes out." you know what I mean? Look, I never say that, but in my head, you know what I mean? But in my head, or it could be I was in a tournament and I got choked out. You know what I mean? And I got to feel that side of it. I got to, I got to go up against a better guy and get sort of, some humility and some perspective on life. So it's not always about this like macho kind of thing. It's just about what that experience is. And so, different people are designed in many ways for different things, but I do think having a competitive outlet outside of business is helpful. I do think it conveys. I think at the end of the day, we're integrated beings. We're not like these compartmentalized beings where you go do this and it does not carry over into this other aspect of your life. I don't think that's the way our brains work.
Right.
You know, it's like our brains take this thing we did in this period of time, and then you're in this different environment, and it's figuring out how to integrate that experience and make it apply in this realm.
That's right.
And so, yeah, you know, it's rare that I come across, you know, people. When I say rare, let's just put it in the 10% category, because I don't want to say like it's like, you know, 1%, but it's like 10% when I'm in a business environment.
Yeah. And
you know, I'm with someone who, you know, outside of business lives their life like a competitive athlete. You know what I mean? So
I think one of the biggest misconceptions, because this is why, again, the competitive outlets in the sports are necessary for a lot of folks. They're necessary for me too. Is that like you know, when you grow, there's a reason they call it growing pains. It always hurts, right? It's painful. And I think for me, the people that I've studied the most are like, anytime you're given a lesson, it's actually a gift, right? But most of the time it's in the form of a loss, right? And so we don't necessarily, our perspective isn't that we just learned a gift. The people that I study the most are they learn the fastest lessons from their losses, and they take what the new knowledge, and it propels them even further. The trajectory totally changes in the way of up. You know what I'm saying?
I couldn't agree more. I also think like we're in this world where labor has moved away from being a physical thing, right?
Yep.
It's very in your head.
Shit.
You're sitting at a desk all the time, and you're on a computer, or you're looking at a screen, and it's like, if you think that's what these bodies are designed to do, like you're off. Right. That's not what these bodies are designed to do. These bodies are designed to do physical things. You know what I mean? And so if you're, you know, but the way that the world works, your aspirations are to do things at a desk and on a screen, because that's where the compensation is.
That's right.
You know, the compensation is not in physical labor unless you're a professional athlete at the highest level in only a select few sports. Right? So that's where the disconnect is. That's where you have so many people who, you know, they do exceptionally well in the business world, but they don't prioritize taking care of themselves.
That's right.
And yeah, to me, I would rather balance that out. You know
That's
what I
right.
mean? I'd rather balance that out.
Well, you have one of the things you've referenced a lot over the years is, and you've called yourself the unlikely entrepreneur. What is that? What's an unlikely entrepreneur? A lot of people are unlikely entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
right.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's I'm trying to signal to other people who see themselves the same way, right? You know, so a couple things. I mean, you know, my parents are a lot of things, but you know, one thing they really were not were entrepreneurs. I mean, my mom, you know, had a small stint where she was running her own medical billing practice with one of her best friends, who's one of my best friend's dads.
Gotcha.
You know, she had a small stint where she was doing that, but for the most part, my parents worked jobs. You know what I mean? For the most part, my parents worked jobs. So I mean, I didn't.
Your dad was a worker.
Yeah, workers. So I got work ethic from them, but like, you know, in terms of knowing like how to run a business, that wasn't something that got passed down. So, you know, okay, you got that. You know, the next thing is I didn't really know finance. I didn't really have any key skills, and then I didn't have like a decent degree, you know. I didn't have any degree, but like, you know, I didn't even have like the kind of degree that, you know, you would look for when you're looking at someone who's like going to build a business and be successful. Didn't have any credentials, you know, no CPA, no real estate license, no, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I basically had nothing.
Right.
And so everything was just self-taught, self-developed. All of it, you know, getting into pro sports, you know, all of it, belief, taking advantage of an opportunity, stepping up, and then having a dream and a vision, and, you know, orchestrating with other people. Right. So, I think that's what it is. I mean, I'm about as unlikely as one could be insofar as like I just didn't have the background and the bona fides to be able to, you know, for people to look and be like, oh, of course you're that.
That's right.
Yeah, that's all.
Well, I mean, again, the best shot is the person who can is the best at aim at targets, right? And you were like, I can remember something you said to me back a long time ago with Nick. It's about creating generational wealth. And that was right about the time financial literacy was something that I was late to the game to understand. And it's the moment that I started to understand actual money, I started having more. It's crazy how that works.
It's so true.
And we're not taught it in any, like,
No.
I was taught everything about the business except for the money.
Yeah. It's a really frustrating thing because it's not that complicated. And one of the things that I found that was really important to me about this book was to try to emphasize that. I try to emphasize it in the 8 core concepts when I put finance right after leadership. I wanted to write a chapter about venture capital and just like try to demystify the words, because one of the most frustrating things about finance is the code. It's one of the easiest things to understand in terms of like the complexity of it.
Right.
But it's very complicated because it's all spoken in code. There's a ton of like words that are used that have these meanings behind them, and if you don't understand the meanings, you just will get lost in a conversation. There's just a lot of terms, just even understanding the idea that the finance industry is selling financial products. Do you know how long it took me to like wrap my head around what that means?
That's right.
Like that's a pretty complicated, esoteric thing to understand. A financial product. What the hell is a financial product? I know what this mic is. I get that as a product. I get these clothes that I'm wearing as a product. But what's a financial product? Right. And when you realize it's people selling you money.
Yes.
Access to money.
That's right.
In exchange for different things.
That's right.
The redemption of that money or ownership in your company or collateral that you currently own that they can collect on. Once you start understanding that part of it, it opens up a lot, because then you start to understand how so many things in the world happen. How do these skyscrapers? We all talk about the cranes in the city, right? And in many cities in America right now, right? There's a lot of building, a lot of developing happening in America today, right? You see cranes. It's like, how many people do you think that live in the city actually know how that building gets financed?
Not many, right?
Dude, it's got to be less than 5%.
That's probably generous,
right? It's got to be less than 5% of the people that live in a city that's got all these cranes going on that could actually explain to you how that building gets financed. So yeah, it's great. And here's the thing: it's not that complicated.
Right.
It's not that complicated. But if no one's ever told you,
that's right.
Right.
That's right. Why do you think it is that? Because one of the And it is one of your 8 core concepts. As a matter of fact, at Team Hyder, launching all the insurance agencies, we focused on the 8 of those, except the CEO of the insurance company created the product. So that was one of the things, and that we didn't have to create. So we just focused on the other core 7.
Right on.
You know what I mean? And use those as the foundations to build. But like, I guess it was me finding out through others that I actually didn't understand. I wasn't very financially literate. I didn't understand the language. I understood what cash flow meant, but I didn't really understand asset, and all those things, and how they cash flow positive and negative and everything else. And really, if you just focus on a couple different words in finance, it's going in the right direction.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, you have to know how to read a balance sheet.
That's right.
Right. You have to know how to read a balance sheet. You have to know how to read a P&L. Right. Profit and loss statement or income statement. But once you can do those things, you're in pretty good shape.
Yep.
You're in pretty good shape. Then the next thing you want to sort of understand are different ways to finance things.
That's right.
Right. After that, then you're pretty much in good shape.
That's right.
Right.
That's
pretty much in good shape.
And there's good and bad debt.
Yeah.
Didn't know that for a long time.
Sure.
I was groomed outside of sports. I was groomed to be a great employee when I got out of school, just like everybody else.
Most of us are.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Most of us are.
And that's a language and a code all in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I got super lucky. Look, the inflection point for me, and I always knew I wanted to be my own boss, but the inflection point for me was when I got hired at Emma, because, the guys who founded Emma, Clint Smith and Will Weaver, they were extremely generous with their early employees. So there were, I think it was like 4 of us that became partners, and I would say it was legitimate, right? They gave us all these director level titles. They basically built the organization underneath us,
right?
For the most part,
you were the original CTO.
Yeah,
right?
I never had the CTO title, so I had
Right.
chief architect title and director of technology. They
Gotcha.
they eventually did hire a CTO, and that's probably for the best. But forget the CTO thing. I had like equity, like meaningful equity in the company.
Yep.
But probably where they were most generous was proximity to them.
Okay.
You know, there were these occasional meetings which had to happen between the partners where they would go off and we wouldn't be a part of it, you know, but for the most part, they let us in on a lot. And being that close to two good people who were destined to be successful founders, I just learned so much in that experience. I didn't learn everything. You don't learn it until you actually do it yourself.
Right.
But you do learn a lot by being that close to it. You know what I mean? And had I not been that close to two really high quality people who were also very good at what they did, you know, who knows what would have played out for me. You know what I mean? So much luck in this stuff, you know?
Sure. Well, the you know, you one of the things that one of your my favorite quotes I've heard you say is well, actually two of them. The first one was, "Don't mistake my chapter 20 for your chapter 1," and to just basically like to be where you are, which it's really easy when you look up to folks and you have people that are inspirations to you or whatever, and you see where they're at and you see where you're at to get frustrated. And you know, obviously, we've been talking. We've gone back to 2011 today. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
There's countless hours, countless wins, countless losses, countless lessons, all those things that you went through to overcome those, everything that you did to get where you're at, all the pivoting and everything else. I mean, so talk to me about Jumpstart Foundry, like the evolution of that company. I don't even know if I totally understand it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second, because
Sure.
it's you and Vic were the two guys that were the co-founders of that, right?
Yeah. So Vic is the founder and I'm the
Okay.
co-founder.
Okay.
Like, you know, full stop. You know, he and I met in 2008. He's a venture capitalist. I was a technology entrepreneur at the time. I'd left Emma, and I had my own little agency. And you know, what was going on in the broader venture capital market was the iPhone had just hit in 2007.
Okay.
Open source software, so I'll be more specific about this. Linux, which powers Android and also powers, you know, most of the web servers in the world,
Okay.
really as an operating system came into prominence.
Okay.
Where like people realized we can build incredibly powerful internet businesses on free software. Okay? And then the other thing that happened was the cloud started to show up. This is the beginning of the cloud.
Right.
Started to show up. You know, AWS was just arriving.
Mm-hmm.
And so those three things radically decreased the cost to build a startup, right? So you go back 10 years before that, and you would have needed, you know, millions of dollars just to like get the servers in the rack in the
Right.
data center, you know, and you know, like we fast forward to today, look at what you've built here. You built
Right.
a full-blown, you know, multimedia studio. Like think about how much this would have cost 20 years ago.
Oh man.
Right? So it's the same thing was happening then. And what that did was it impacted venture because you had some programmers who were really on top of that. They were really on top of the fact that the cost to create a startup was dropping dramatically. And so this guy named Paul Graham started Y Combinator out in Silicon Valley. And what he basically said was, listen, if we get two technical founders to start a company and we give them $15,000 and a ton of mentorship, they'll build something that's going to be really good. And then we can then ship them off to a VC, and we can have a good percent of ownership of the company. And then the VC is going to be like, wow, this is a great team. They've been mentored by the best in the business.
Oh, wow.
And it took almost no money to get them off the ground because of open source software and the cloud and the phone and all this other kind of stuff.
Get
right?
out.
Yeah. And so we started Jumpstart Foundry. It was, Vic's idea, but I knew more about the accelerators than he did. Y Combinator is the first accelerator in the really in the world, and then Techstars came out not too far behind it. We ended up basing on Techstars because they were based in Boulder, Colorado. So the idea there was you could take the Y Combinator model, but you could do it in any city in the world.
Okay.
Right. And so we were like, well, Nashville is more like Boulder than Silicon Valley. So let's take the Techstars model. And we did. And that happened at the same time as the Nashville Entrepreneur Center was launching. And so the very first version of Jumpstart Foundry, 2010, let's call it, was an accelerator.
Right.
Okay. It was an accelerator housed at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, investing $15,000 into tech companies literally from around the world. We were getting applications from everywhere. But it was nights and weekends thing. Like nobody was full time. You're investing almost no money, right? And so it was nights and weekends. We did that for 4 or 5 years, nights and weekends. And at the end, we went from being one of, let's call it 100 accelerators in the world to one of 4,000 or 5,000.
Yep.
Kickstarter started, so that was more competition.
Right.
And
big competition.
Big competition for that model, right?
Yeah.
That like low capital mentorship model is big competition. And our deal flow, went from being all over the world to literally just in our zip code.
Okay.
So market got saturated. So we were like, okay, we know more about this than everyone else who's just started because we've been doing it for 5 years. We know it's not sustainable. And we also know we can't compete with the coasts on tech only. We have to figure out a model that will work, and we got to play to our geographic strength. So we had two choices. You either do healthcare or you do music.
There you go.
You're in Nashville, right?
Yep.
Nashville's changed quite a bit since then.
Sure.
You have more options now. But back in 2014, you had one option, healthcare and music. That's it. So we chose healthcare.
Yep.
And then we also decided to increase the amount that we were going to invest. And we were to be clear, we were following Y Combinator and Techstars' lead on this. In the beginning of 2014, Techstars published something called the New Deal. It was like a blog post, and basically they said we're 10xing our investment from 15K to 150K. That was in response to all the other Me Too accelerators that had come into the market. So that was smart because a lot of other accelerators were not going to be able to make that jump, right?
Okay.
Not going to be able to make a 10x jump. And Techstars followed like right away. They were like, "Yep, us too." They're like, "Okay." You know what I mean? If we're gonna follow, we gotta like follow,
right?
And that was where we realized, well, we can't 10x our investments unless we're doing this full time. Okay, we need to figure out how to do this full time, how to transition. And so, October, I became full time president of Jumpstart Foundry. Vic started full time January of 2015 as CEO. And that started our process of investing exclusively in early stage healthcare companies. So I'll just kind of now fast forward to today.
Yeah.
So in 2015, we raised $1 million to invest in.
It's a big thing, man.
Yeah, it was a big jump for us, to invest in 8 or so companies. We had a bunch of interns. We were housed at the Entrepreneur Center. And all we were doing was Jumpstart Foundry. That was all we were doing. Today, we have 3 fund families. So it's 3 different funds and different leaders of those funds, all called Jumpstart something.
Yep.
Collectively, our assets under management it's over 100 million.
Wow.
But I think we're like at 115 or so at this point. We've got over 150 portfolio companies. We just did another 18 investments in Jumpstart Foundry, so that we'll announce those pretty soon. Mm-hmm. And then Vic runs a fund and I run a fund. So he runs Jumpstart Capital, which is like our flagship kind of cornerstone fund, investing seed Series A. He writes checks like $1 to $5 million. And then I run Jumpstart Nova, which is the first fund investing exclusively in Black founded and led companies in the U.S.
So
healthcare.
Awesome.
And our check sizes are like $1 to $3 million.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, that's incredible. I just don't think, literally you guys started as just you invest in a pretty vague concept of tech.
That's right. Broad. Yeah.
And again, always being able to pivot, and as you grow, it's obviously because literally starting out of the Entrepreneur Center, excuse me, is like how many people that's an unbelievable story. Like if you wrote it, they just watching the WeWork documentary or the series that they had out, just watching how it the same one about Uber, like the stories are the same.
Yeah, yeah. And look, it's much, much harder to do those types of things outside of the coast, right? I mean, those stories hit a different magnitude of scale when they're in San Francisco or Silicon Valley or Boston or New York because of the amount of capital.
Accessibility, yeah.
Yeah, there's so much more capital in those cities. Nashville is changing and growing, and so there is more capital here than there's ever been. There's no question about that. That's like just the truth. But, when we started, there wasn't that much capital here. And so, right. Raising $1 million was a big deal, Now it's like, it boggles our mind to think about, like, how did we operate with $1 million in AUM? It's like, I don't even know how you do it.
Yep.
But we did it somehow,
Yep.
We figured it out. And, yeah, that's the story.
Incredible, dude. So I always people ask me from time to time, like, when it comes to Marcus, like, what is that, like, how does he stand out to you? Well, obviously, you talked about earlier. You talked about, you defined standards, and I question the team about that a lot. I'm like, like, the choices that you make are based on a standard that you just have, right? So if you were brought up middle class, if you don't change that standard, that's where you're going to end up, right? So and then you've been focusing on generational wealth. So, like, you can go to church and you hear a lot about generational sin, which is just the other side of, it's the bad side of generational wealth, right?
Yeah.
So, this really hit hard for me because at the time I wouldn't say I was lost, but I was searching for things, searching for destinations. And when you said those two words, I remember I went in and I started studying what that meant, and that was where I found generational sin and all that and all those other things. But I started to think, like, that's, for me, like, that's, you got to have an end goal or a destination. That's how your GPS works when you program it in your phone. You got to tell it where you're going. Generational wealth can be a end destination, and it totally is for me, because I went and I talked to my wife about it, and it became her goal as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how has that destination for you kind of outlined and streamlined your process for what you're getting? How have you associated that with wanting to be in sports and all these other things? Because you probably just could have created that with just Jumpstart without doing anything else, right?
Yeah, there's no question about that. I think that the generational wealth thing is something that is very important to me, but is not my only, and maybe not even my ultimate goal.
Okay.
Because the slippery slope with generational wealth is I don't want to rob my kids of their own legacy. So, it's like,
yeah, dude,
I want to enable a platform for them to do whatever it is they want to do, but I don't want to do it for them. Right. And so that's kind of the tricky part of generational wealth. Now, if let's say that one of my sons comes and says, okay, I want to be a billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that, that on its own is not really a good thing to aspire to be, I don't think. I mean, what do you want to do with the billions, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just using it because it's a pretty significant metric. And, there aren't that many people who will achieve that height, right? So, there's the self-made billionaires who literally by themselves came from like nothing and got there. But I would say, for the most part, more often than not, people who get to that level, they get there because they had a platform and then they scaled it from there, right? I think about WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment. Vince McMahon is actually, junior. Like, his dad was Vince McMahon Senior, and he ran the first version of WWF or whatever, WWF, and Vince took it and turned it into a whole nother level. You know what I mean? Right? A whole nother level. But he had something to work with.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And he actually bought the business from his dad, right? So it's like, there's a question. Could Vince have built WWE into what it is today without having had that foundation that his dad initially built?
Right.
You could do a lot of what ifing, but it's questionable, right? It's questionable because he had the legacy and all the stuff that comes with it. So, if one of my kids came to me and said they effectively wanted to do what Vince McMahon has pulled off, then okay, then the generational wealth really serves a purpose, right? Because it's just a launching pad. It's not doing any of the work for them. It's just the raw ingredients that they need to kind of go, exercise their own legacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But but I don't want to rob them of that. And they're two capable human beings, right? You know, they've got great minds. They're healthy, physically.
Yeah.
You know, thank God. And they can do a lot in this world. And you know, that's the, you know, you get your purpose.
That's right.
From pushing yourself and being out in the world like that, right?
Folks, I hope you understand what he just said. So, like, there's a statistic that I read once that like 80 to 85% of second generational businesses fail, right? And the reason is because it's somebody else's dream that has been passed on that maybe isn't theirs. And that's the catch right there, is that you're taking something that's basically just a foundation and you're rocking and rolling with it moving forward. And you're not living out your parents' dream. You're taking something a platform they gave you and turning it into your own.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, and that's totally fine. Right?
Absolutely.
That works. You know, in that instance. I mean, look, you know, I actually think John Ingram, who is the majority owner of Nashville Soccer Club, I think he's a great example of this, right? I mean, his dad, Bronson Ingram, you know, you can't take it away. Like he gets the legacy for building the Ingram business, the foundation of it, you know. But you know, it's really great to see the things that John has done. Yeah. You know, that the credit is his, you know. Lightning Source, I mean, he pioneered print on demand books. That book was print on demand at a Lightning Source facility, like most books in America are. Right. You know what I mean? And you know, Nashville Soccer Club, like that, you know, that stadium, right? So you know what I mean? Like he had the foundation, and he had the platform, but he used it to go do the next level thing, right? You know what I mean? He didn't just sit with it. He used it to go do the next level thing. And to me, that's totally cool. You know what I mean?
It sounds a lot like cool. The story of the soccer club, how you guys had something that was a foundation, and then when he came on board, and then you guys all rose together. Yeah.
Because make no mistake, like, you know, you need someone with that kind of capital to do it.
Absolutely.
You know, it's capital intensive.
Absolutely.
You know, at a level that most things are just not.
Sure. Right. And it's money at the end of the day is a form of power. And
that's cool.
Absolutely, because it can be used. We say it here all the time that money just amplifies who you are. If you're a good person, you're a better person with money.
Totally.
If you're a bad person, you're a worse person with more money.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, so teaching your kids, because like you've been doing all this while raising. So my son's about to be a teenager. Mm-hmm. And then we have the little one that just turned 1, right? So I'm just about to get into teenage years, and those are crazy times.
They are.
As a parent, and that was when you were probably you and your wife were your busiest.
Yeah.
When that was happening, right? So, talk to me a little bit about the balance, because I think if you can master this, you can master entrepreneurship. If you can master owning a business and owning a home, because every person in the home is like the baby and Ethan are two totally different like ventures.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
For sure. So I guess what I can just say, well, I'll start by just saying, you know, this is just my experience. You know, I don't. Parenting is so difficult that like I just share my experience.
That gets one right there for sure.
You know what I mean? I just share my experience, and it's like I feel like I'm on solid ground when I say that, right? Mm-hmm. So my experience has been that the most important things to teach the boys have been the absolute basics, like how to live, right? Yep. How do you interact with the rest of the world? How do you take care of yourself? How do you take accountability and responsibility for your actions? How do you not look to make excuses and to scapegoat? It's not any of the things that it's not any of the things that I thought they would be, you know, because the real issues that come up in the teenage years are about interpersonal dynamics. Right. Whether it's them and their family members, or them and their friends, or them and their very first significant others, like them and their teachers, them and authority figures. It's all interpersonal dynamics, and it's all about them understanding what is appropriate behavior, right? How do they hold themselves accountable? Yeah. How do they grow from? What's the proper response when you come up short? Right? Because honestly, there's way more wrong responses when you come up short than there are right ones.
Right.
There's only a couple of right things to do when you come up short. There's a million wrong ones. And when you're a kid, you don't know the right ones.
Right.
Right? Even if they've been modeled for you, you don't
Right.
know them, because once you get that feeling of doing something wrong, that's a brutal feeling.
Yes.
Right? It's a brutal feeling, and it's painful, and you want out of the pain. So lying is one way to get out of the pain.
That's right.
Because you could tell yourself a story, and then, it's like, oh,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. And that's a habit. That's a gateway.
Yeah. Or gaslighting somebody else. No, it wasn't me. It was you.
Right.
Right. I mean, there's all these things, right?
Yeah.
And you have to really, before you put a kid out there in the world, the most, you owe the world
Yeah.
to make sure they know how to behave.
Yep.
And they know how to respond when they get it wrong.
Bam.
Right. After that, I want to make sure they know how to be healthy.
Yep.
I have boys, so again, it's like, what do I know? I know about how to raise my two boys.
And they're two totally different people.
Two totally different people, okay? But what's not totally different about them is the need they both have to work out in order to be in a good headspace.
Right.
Like, if they slack off and start like not taking care of themselves physically, like, here comes the bad behavior.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Here comes the excuses. Here comes all this other kind of stuff.
Yep.
So, making sure that they're tracking, you have to get good sleep. You have to work out. You have to eat well.
Yeah.
Sure, you're both over 21 now. So, okay, you're going to drink, that's fine, but don't do anything stupid. No showstoppers, right? Like, just the basics, man. The rest of the stuff, they're pretty smart.
Yeah.
They'll figure out the other stuff. And if they want specific guidance, they know where to find me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
But it's those things that you as a parent, like, for them and also for the world, right?
Yeah.
You have to get those things right.
Yes. And balancing, you had to balance the time to be able to do all that on top of all your responsibilities to yourself, to the businesses. Like you talked about that. You had a great speak. You came and spoke to the team a couple years ago, and that was the big focus of that was the time budget.
Yeah, I mean, to me, look,
nobody budgets their time.
There are some things that if you don't handle them, they will consume all of your time, right? And your kids are one of those things.
Say that again.
There are some things that if you don't handle them will end up consuming all of your time.
That's right.
And so it's like better to nip it in the bud, better to deal with it first.
Yeah.
And also, like, it's a really good signal to them, in my experience. It's a really good signal to them when they know you will drop everything to come deal with them.
Right.
Right? Because then they knew, like, they couldn't wait for a certain moment when you were busy to do something. There were moments where I would be in another city and I'd be like, I'm buying a plane ride, a ticket right now.
Yep.
I'm coming home right now. I will see you in 4 hours.
And they knew, and hell's coming with me.
Right. And then I showed up.
That's right.
Right. And so it's like they need to know that. And look, it's their job. Their job is to, like, check boundaries, see what's real, what's not real in the world. They're trying to feel everything out, and you got to show them just how real the world is. Because you're the proxy for the world until they get out there in the real world.
Oh.
Right. They don't have, like, the rest of the world is depending on you to be that proxy.
That's right.
The rest of the world is not going to discipline them. You know what I mean?
That's right.
That's clear.
That's right.
So you have to represent to the best of your ability how the world will treat them based on their behavior.
Oh my goodness.
Right. So
you are welcome, folks. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, dude, like, so I was. Your story is incredible. We could have spent the whole time just talking about, tell me about Emma and all those things. But, like, I wanted to really, like, I feel like what I wanted to get out of today was, so many people are entertaining right now, starting a business. I think right now, I may be wrong about this, but I feel like we're more open-minded to entrepreneurism than ever before. Now.
There's no question about it. Yeah.
So, and when you get somebody that, some of the most, I was trying to think some of the most common questions that I get when I go speak or do whatever is because I feel the same way about you, and I wanted them to get, like, first of all, nobody's patient enough to withstand the test of time. God puts the greatest things in your life on the other side of your failures, man. And those, again, but those failures, a lot of times it's just being like, I played professional baseball because I was good, but I was also the last man standing.
Dude, there's so much of that. And, but you only get that wisdom when you are the last man or woman standing.
That's right.
You only get that wisdom when you've hung in there, you know, and you've seen that it's not who gets picked first, and you've seen that it's not who looks shiny or whatever. You know what I mean? It's the person who endures, right? That's
right.
That's when you get it.
That's right.
And so, yeah,
absolutely. Well, it's there's always going to be, you're always underfunded. Everybody has a marketing problem when they start. They never have enough. They never budget enough for marketing a new business. Everybody's underfunded.
That's right.
Because there's problems you haven't encountered yet, and
that's right.
You don't go out and get investments for things you don't know exist yet.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So like, it's like you said, being able to get hit all the time and just keep getting back up and keep moving forward and learn those lessons along the way. It's just, that was what I really wanted to get out of today, is like, you said it yourself, bringing in a major league sport to a city is incredible. Launching a VC fund the way you guys have done it is incredible. You just said anybody can write a book. I watched you do it 5 years in the making, funded properly. Like, I mean, it's a hardback copy, bestseller. It's incredible. Like, you can go on your YouTube and see all kinds of great stuff. I would recommend watching this and then checking out. Your audio universe is phenomenal. You've had some killer guests on that.
Yeah, it's an archive, right? Because I had to stop doing that to focus on raising the fund. And I think that's one of the things that you're asking about for people who are thinking about starting a business, right? So one of the reasons why I wrote the book is because I really do believe that entrepreneurship is accessible by most people. I won't go so far as to say all, but by most people. And I didn't see a lot of books that I thought gave enough of the clarity on what those people who were seeking that would need to understand in order to have a shot at it, right? So that's what that book is. It's also far better at articulating my thoughts on this than I can even right now, or if you were to try to ask me to go to coffee, or even when I do public speaking, like, it's still better. The book is still better than all of those things, and but there are some things that aren't really in the book, right? Because I've lived some life since I've published it, right? And one of the big things that happened, that's actually one of the reasons why the book got live, was I ended up making the decision to stop drinking, right?
Gotcha.
And what I'm saying is not, hey, if you want to have a successful business, stop drinking.
No, you didn't have a drinking problem.
Right. Well, no, I did. Oh,
you did? Okay.
I did. No, I was a functional alcoholic, right?
Gotcha.
So, I was doing a lot of stuff, but I was also hungover and actually thinking like that was like my prime capability.
Gotcha.
When I, now I'm just like, I could be a world champion if I, you know what I mean? Like, but the real point I want to make is, you do have to do, if you want to be exceptional, you have to do things that stand out from other people, right? And a lot of that is just about looking at yourself. Okay, a lot of that is looking at yourself and just being honest, right? You talked about the failures, right? And everything that you want is on the other side of that failure. That's true, and everything you want is also on the other side of sacrifice, right? And what is it that you're willing to give up? What part of yourself that you hold closely are you willing to let die? Yeah. To give birth to a new you.
That's right.
Right? Like, what are you willing to do in order to have this vision that's in your head, but when you look in the mirror is not there? What are you willing to do to get there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's really what you have to ask yourself. And you have to do it over a sustained period of time.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't get to do it for a week.
That's right.
And be like, it didn't work.
That's right. Thank you.
It's all years.
Thank you.
Everything is years.
Consistency trumps intensity all day.
Everything is years. I just got accepted into this like fellowship, and I can't like actually say what it is because they told me to swear to secrecy. So like it'll be announced, here, I don't know, in the next couple months or whatever. But man, when I got the call and they told me, I mean, I have to say I already knew I was in.
Yep.
But man, when I think back to when I first applied and I didn't get in 4 years ago, and I thought about how much I wanted to be there,
mm-hmm.
and I wasn't ready, right? But it didn't mean I would never be ready.
There you go.
I just had to keep going, keep building, and keep doing. And so it's like, when I got the call, and this is not me being arrogant. It's like I knew that I had done the sufficient work, to get there.
That's right.
And this won't rise to the level of like being in my bullet point, resume when I get introed into shows. But for me,
absolutely,
it's like a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. It was a mile marker. It was something I really wanted to be a part of. I wanted to participate in. I felt like it would help me grow, stretch me. And it's a competitive process to get into it. And I really hadn't wanted to be a part of any of these things like this one, and it's 4 years.
Right on.
It was a 4-year process for me to get in. But then when I got in, it was like, I'm in.
That's right.
Right. I'm in.
That's right.
So, because I've done the work.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I've done the work. So it's just years, man. It's just, you have to.
The another thing too, this is kind of where I wanted to kind of come in full circle. So beginnings often hide themselves in an end, right? And quitting is an art. Quitting is necessary. So like Jumpstart had to get into where they're at today, they had to quit investing into certain things. So quitting is a total art. You have to understand how to quit, because another form of quitting is giving up. And quitting is just a filter, in my opinion, on how to grow and how to refine targets. You know what I'm saying? And
if I had the button, I'd be hitting it.
Oh yeah, well that's the I'll give myself one.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I think that's the greatest thing when we talk about overcoming failure and all those things is the greatest in business. Just are the best quitters. Is another way is one of the things that we say. For you, how does that? You've quit a lot of things in your life, right? I have too, for growth, to do something else. Sometimes you quit something so you can spend more time. It's a sacrifice that you mentioned a minute ago.
Yeah.
To do other things. What would be? We have our audience is around 13 countries, all 50 states. I'm amazed at how big this thing has gotten in such a short amount of time.
Amazing.
It truly is, and it's mostly because of the amazing people like you that have entertained coming and hanging out with me. But like a lot of the folks, a lot of the questions, a lot of the feedback that we get, they're people that are about to take that leap or they just took that leap, and they get a lot of inspiration from this. And I want them to truly understand the art of quitting. The art of quitting. What, like for you, how has that been for me when I quit something? It's just like it's a button that like my energy level just goes through the roof because I feel like I'm clear thought. I have a clear thought on what's next. For you, what is like how can an entrepreneur use quitting?
So I think there are only two types of things that you quit. One is a lot easier than the other.
Okay.
When you quit doing something, that's pretty easy.
Right.
People think that's hard. That's pretty easy.
Right.
Because, you're only dealing with you. The much harder one is quitting other people.
Oh, that's
the hard one.
That's exactly where I wanted you to go. That's awesome.
The hard one. And, the one interesting thing that I see in my life right now is my life is made up of an incredible group of people. And it's probably, it's probably 30 or 40 people, right, that really make up my universe on a very regular basis.
Yep.
Okay. And they all belong. Right. They all belong. one of the hardest things about growing up is you have to meet a lot of people.
Yes.
And there will undoubtedly be people who only need to be there for a season.
That's right.
I can honestly say the people that I'm with right now, 90% are there for the long haul. Are there? I mean, until the wheels fall off, until like funeral time, right? You know what I mean? Like
that's got to be such a secure feeling.
It's incredible, right? It's incredible. 90% are probably there, but it wasn't always that way,
right?
You know what I mean? Some of the most important things I've quit are people, and that's hard, man.
Yes,
that's really hard.
That's right.
It's really hard.
If the 99% versus the 1%. It's nobody understands that to be the 1%, you can't be like anybody else.
No.
And nobody understands. Took me a long time. I got just somebody ate me alive on social media over a comment I made about like there's people that I love that I grew up with that I can't hang out with anymore, just because we're not going to the same place, and who you hang out with, who you associate with that's your future right there, dude. You can't hang out with all these people and go a different place.
Look, it's pretty obvious, right? It's obvious, but we don't acknowledge it. We're not like willing to acknowledge it.
Right.
We are energetic beings.
Yep.
Of course we are. What do you think you are? You're walking around here, you got breath in your lungs. How'd that get there?
That's right.
You know what I mean? How are you walking around at 7 degrees? Mm-hmm. How are you made up 80% of water? Like, I'm not trying to get woo woo here, but like we transfer energy, people. That's what we are. We're walking bodies of energy, and it's like people are vibing at different levels.
Yep.
You got to be aware of that.
That's right. You
got to be aware of that, and it doesn't mean that over the course of one's life they won't change where they're vibing at.
That's right.
But understand, energy is like, it gets passed.
Bam.
It gets passed.
Bam.
And so you have to be really, you have to be very, very protective of that. If you care about your goals, if you care about the people in your life, and how you show up in those people's lives, and being sort of a consistent, stable force. That's right. Listen, you can't be like just running around engaging with just about anybody.
That's right.
All willy-nilly.
You won't let your kids do it. Why would you do it to yourself?
It's the bottom line. And the reason why I thought about it is because like I think it's one of the most difficult things for kids specifically, right? Because when kids are in school, it's like it's all about everyone's equal. Be friends with everybody, right? Like because we're trying to teach them about general humanity and community values. But like the reality is, as they start to get older, they're going to start finding out that their friends don't all vibe the same.
That's right. And
that the most influential people in their life are the people who are around them all the time. And there's a real question: are those people lifting them up? Or are those people holding them down? And oh, by the way, back to the accountability thing, they're part of it too.
That's right.
So it's not happening to them; they're participating in it. That's why the selection, the choice of who they're around, is the most important thing.
That's it.
Right. So
that's it.
Yeah, that's hard.
Absolutely,
that's really hard. It generally gets better as you get older, but not always.
That's right. Well, man, I could honestly, we could go on. I could go on for hours and hours and hours with you. However, I know that you got an extremely tight schedule. I promised you I'd get you out on time.
I appreciate that,
dude. Is there anything? Is there anything else that that you would like to leave the folks with today that we didn't get to? Like honestly, I've just thoroughly enjoyed this time. This was it's so neat getting to have questions that I just have. I get to ask them on a microphone for lots of other people. It's so cool.
It's a great gig.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, I hope you'll come back again. I always like to book the next one. Before you did it one with Team Hider, you said you'd always come back and speak to the team when we got our $2 million week.
That's right.
So I definitely have to get you back down the line to see what else is happening and all the growth that you had. Is there anything else that you want to leave the folks with today, man?
I just kind of want to end where we started. And I didn't say this, but I thought about it when we were as we've been talking. which is, you know, and I've said this to you before, but, you know, we talked about my parents being sort of like the stabilizing force, but it is also absolutely 1,000% true, and this gets back to the quitting people thing, that you were a stabilizing force on that block. You know, we hadn't had the best luck with renters, you know, up until that point. And you and Rhiannon and Ethan were this incredible stabilizing force for a community. And you guys were incredible, you know, and, you know, I think you and your family, and that's how I would put it, your family, you know, they'll be that, you know, it's like your family, you're just incredible people, you know, and I'm thrilled for all the good things that continue to happen in your life. You're clearly living the right way, and you know, I'm proud of you, and I'll come back, of course.
Absolutely. And folks, just to let you know what kind of people these guys are, we still get invited on Christmas Eve. We still mark it like clockwork. Around the 25th, 26th, or 27th, there'll be a knock at my door, and it will be him and Rachel dropping off some stuff. It happens every single year. Even when we moved and they didn't know where we lived, they found us somehow. That's just the type of people that they are, folks. And check it out. Like in these days, you get featured in a lot of stuff. I want you guys to this before I get done. You've been featured by Entrepreneur, CNBC, NPR, Fast Company, The Atlantic, the Nashville Business Journal, which is a phenomenal publication. You've been featured in the Power 100. I mean, dude, this is really cool. You spoke at the TEDx Nashville. I know that was another milestone that you had said you were going to do, and by God, you did it within a year or two. Like, it's awesome. You're probably the best goal setter that I've ever met, and you just go get it, dude.
I'd be really bored if I didn't have another goal, man. So yeah, we'll keep setting them, man. Thank you.
Fantastic. If you want to check him out, you need to follow this guy. Check him out on his social, Marcus Whitney. You can check out his website where a lot of the stuff he's into is there, marcuswhitney.com, as well as jumpstarthealth.co. From college dropout to waiter to self-taught, successful serial entrepreneur, man. That's fantastic. Thanks so much for hanging with me today.
Thanks for having me, man.
Well, folks, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of The Hit Streak. I am your man, Nick Hyder. God bless.